Hello there guys, it's Daniel. It's Monday, it's added time once again, answering your questions after a very disappointing and humbling weekend once again for Chelsea in 2023. But we got the Christmas tree up now, trying to feel a little bit more festive, even if Chelsea, I'm sure over this period, will try to dampen our moods as they have throughout 2023. If you are new around here, want to get involved in the content, ask your questions for next week's episode of Added Time, please do hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on, hit the like button, share the content around with fellow Chelsea fans. Also, if you're listening on the podcast, thank you for tuning in as well. But let's get into your questions from X at SonOfChelsea and also via my YouTube community page. Firstly, here from Luke Bashan, he asks, we've conceded 20 goals in 13 games despite supposedly Cucurella, Gusto, Reece, Colwell, Silva and Disasi having decent or good seasons. This doesn't add up. Surely we need to establish a consistent back four that can gel with each other. What would be your preferred back four for the rest of the season? I would say about that 20 goals in 13 games stat, 8 of those have come literally in the last 2 games. So to say that that's that does kind of absolutely weight those stats. They are concerning, obviously, in terms of the last 2 games. You can't keep on conceding that number of goals and that number of high quality chances and expect to do anything. But I don't think that, to me, completely means that the defense is a shambles and it really needs to be ripped up and built back together again. I think it's more to do with tweaks. And there is another question here regarding set pieces. I feel that obviously Reece James, when he's not suspended, takes the place on the right side of the fence. I feel like Pochettino has to make a decision over a back two if he's going to continue to play a back two. And this was something I did discuss in depth on that Chelsea podcast. I go on there quite regularly. Brilliant Chelsea podcast, by the way. Also, like Son of Chelsea, as part of the Sports Social Podcast Network. Go and check that episode out we did in reference to the Newcastle game, where I do feel like maybe a harsh decision is going to happen eventually with Thiago Silva. So then I think you have to really then focus in on a back two. I do think at the current point, without Wesley Fofana back, the idea of having a combination that has the chemistry that we know inbuilt from Monaco of Badiashile and Axel Disasi makes a lot of sense. I think from a technical point of view, but also from a physical point of view, they've got speed as well. Probably not as much as maybe Fofana can give you, but we're going to have to wait a long time for him to return. So I'd go with those two. Of course, Marc Cucurella has had some decent games, but I thought he was pretty shocking on Saturday, like a lot of Chelsea players. And I do think that Levi will find his way back into this team pretty soon. So if you are going with that too, then you probably are having Levi at left back until Ben Chilwell is fit, which again doesn't happen until the new year. It's very difficult to give you like literally the whole back four because there's been injuries, there's been suspensions, but that would be the one I'm thinking of right now that hopefully would give a nice balance to the team of creativity, of technical quality, physicality, and speed, which is what this team really needs one-on-one if they're going to be as progressive as they are against teams, which is what Pochettino wants to do. Bassman here with his regular question, when will it end, Robbie? Well, I have checked for you this time. It's the 19th of May 2024 when Chelsea play Bournemouth at home. That's the final game of the season, unless Chelsea get to an FA Cup final maybe. That will be it for this season. I can't say generally if you're going more existential. That's, of course, a question for someone else. But that's when this season will end. And that's probably the firmest answer I can give you at the moment. Carefree Jam asks, how many points do you think we will get? Which then provides an upcoming screenshot of games, which is Brighton, Man United, Everton and Sheffield United. Some people I could already see are saying we're going to lose all of those games. And maybe it's, if you're really cynical, really negative, and especially with what we've seen throughout the course of this season. Of course, Chelsea losing that number of consecutive games is not abnormal. But I do have confidence that Chelsea will get back on track. And I think 6 to 7 points I don't think is unrealistic. I really don't. I think we can, with good focus, can provide a good performance against Brighton. Man United, I think there are ways Chelsea to exploit Man United. Everton have been pretty poor so far this season. Yes, they've had an uptick recently, but I still think Chelsea should be going there with the belief that they can get 3 points. And it's the same with Sheffield United. Despite low blocks. Sheffield United are in the bottom three for a reason, and we should be beating them. So it's not the case that now it's all doom and gloom. We're going to lose every single game. I think 67 points. Yes, you are going to Old Trafford. Yes, you are facing Brighton at home. But the team needs to respond and they need to get points on the board quickly. Krishna asks, personally, I feel the inconsistency could have been expected with the squad turnover and injuries. Do you feel like that is fixed this season or the next? Personally, I feel like next season should be better with a settled squad and even more time developing under Poch. Yeah, I feel that they're absolutely... The massive turnover of players we saw at Chelsea is very uncommon for a team at this level. Usually the type of turnover we saw is something that happens quite frequently in, say, the lower leagues, where you are losing players 1 to 2 years and that squad is forever changing. So, and as well, some big characters within there, or players that had been very much settled within Chelsea. You've got players who've been here over a decade, like Cesar Azpilicueta, who left over the summer, Mason Mount, who's been here since he was a kid, but, had obviously been a very integral player in the first team. Kai Havertz had played so much football for Chelsea. It goes on and on, really. So to expect all of that to happen and everything to click overnight is obviously a bit unrealistic. And I do think that people keep on referencing other examples within the Premier League, whether that be Arsenal under Arteta, or of course you could look at Eddie Howe with Newcastle. I mean, the reality is Eddie Howe's been the head coach of Newcastle since November of 2021. In that time, Chelsea have sacked Thomas Tuchel, they've sacked Graham Potter, they've had Frank Lampard as an interim head coach, and now they have Mauricio Pochettino. So technically, you can't really include Bruno in that. If you want to be really, pedantic, I guess you could add the fifth, but at least 4 people in that post. So it's not just about the behind the scenes things that Newcastle have done well to get them to this point, but to entrust a head coach over a longer period of time and really bed him in there to instill that culture is obviously as important. And I think some people just want to kind of revert to type and think that sacking the head coach right now is going to make the key difference. I don't think it will. And I'm a little bit baffled by some of the reports I've heard in terms of Chelsea's ownership thinking that, we have to get Champions League football. I understand from a financial point of view, but then it comes back to, why did you have such a massive turnover when you knew the instability that was going to create? And also when you invest in so many young players at the same time, like that also is going to create a lack of, instability. Just understanding that when you bring in young players, they aren't going to be the ready-made article. You're going to have to give them time to develop and gel, not only as a team, but as individuals. So I personally think that you got to give Pochettino time. I think from what I've seen so far, I do think with time, Chelsea will get better with him as a coach. And I do agree with you that next season, I think Chelsea will look a lot more stable. And finally here from SJ, should Coquelin be starting over Coquelin to help us in height? Feels like since we've gone to Cuckoo at left back, we've conceded some huge chances from set pieces. We absolutely have. I mean, we got physically dominated against Newcastle, against Manchester City. The way we conceded that goal against the Manuel Akanji. Are you solely black? I do think that when Coquelin is present, we know people like to scapegoat. They'll just pinpoint Coquelin for every single goal. But there absolutely was a case on Saturday. I thought he was responsible for the first one. That wasn't a set piece, by the way. But I do agree that, Levi, I could see him coming back in against, well, he's going to have to probably come back in some fashion against Brighton because Coquelin is suspended. And I'd be quite surprised if Ian Maatsen starts because Maatsen has barely played so far this season. So I do think that maybe he'll just revert Pochettino back to what he did, I want to say before the October international break, when Levi was playing that role and he was starting to settle in that role a little bit more. I think the big thing for me is that chemistry and connection and just a little bit of certainty around players within that area, because we can have all the hype. We had all right height on Saturday. But if players are just not being commanding and not communicating with each other, you can have physically dominant players. But if you're just not in the right position and structurally we were as open as we were against Newcastle, but I could see Coquelin coming in for that specific reason. So that is it for this edition of Added Time. Thank you guys for submitting your questions. Apologies to those I couldn't get to. If you are new around here and want to submit your question for next week, please do go on my YouTube community page next Sunday when I will be posting the questions following the Brighton game, and also on X at SonOfChelsea. Follow me there. I post at a similar time requesting your questions. So thank you for watching. Follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.